Hour number 2 of the Ed Dean Radio Show. I want to thank the producer, Vince Young. Vince is really breaking things down, percentages as the election results. And by the way, election results are coming in, but they're mostly of the early voting. And, of course, if you go to votebrevard.com or go to the supervisor of elections throughout the state, for those of you listening to this show in other parts of the state of the Ed Dean Radio Show, that they're listing of who many have voted by the absentee early vote and what the percentages are as far as people. Now, it doesn't tell you they haven't counted the results yet. They're just giving you a number of people that have voted, and it's actually a pretty good site that's going on of them coming in some counties of, hour per hour, and I kind of like that. Hour number 2 of the Ed Dean Radio Show, the email address, eddeanradio@gmail.com, eddeanradio@gmail.com. You can watch us live on the air with our partners over at spacecoastdaily.com/election, spacecoastdaily.com/election. Political editor Matt O'Hearn is hanging out with me tonight. Now, we had the regular show all the way up to 7 o'clock, and then tonight we have election coverage. Tonight we will give full-blown analysis on the pros and cons of why some people were able to hack it and some people were not able to hack it. Now, I think we're going to get the coverage done by 9, Vince, but if we have to go further, hey, shades of election season 2000. Remember that? We were here till 3 o'clock in the morning.
That night was crazy. I will never forget that.
You remember that? You were with me, and then remember John left, and then John came back, and I was like, what, he can't sleep? He goes, no, have you seen the results? And I was like, wow.
Yeah. That was an insane night.
And we'll talk about some of the election results. Again, if you want more information, or just keep it into WMEL 1300, and of also our friends at spacecoastdaily.com/election. Giles Malone, thank you for the upcoming pizza that's coming in.
Yep.
And we appreciate it, and all the people here. And who's the engineer in the back besides Johnny O'Hara? And then Vince Young and those guys. You guys, thank you so much for helping out. So we got a list of other guests also coming on, and we're going to give you full-blown analysis at 7 o'clock, the pros and cons and what is missing in elections today. Kevin Derby, senior political writer from the SunshineStateNews.com. Kevin, it is a horrible election voter turnout. Are there any counties that may see a swing up in some of the voter turnout?
Yeah, I think Broward County in particular seems to be what we'd want to keep my eye on. I'd also keep my eye on a little bit on the west side of Duval County in Jacksonville, where there's a very hotly contested Republican state house race as well as some congressional primary. I'd also look at Tampa Bay, some very, very tight races there. Those would be the ones I'd kind of keep my eye on, going so far into it. Having said that, though, I don't think it really is that important at the state level. I really don't see, with the exception of the George Sheldon Perry Thurston race, which I think Sheldon's going to pull off, I don't particularly see the gubernatorial races as that large of a turnout. Look, in recent years, we've seen about, in off-year elections, about 20, 22% or so in off-year primary results in the turnout. I think we'll probably be a little lower than that. I don't think we're going to be at the 17, 18% we've been at before, like 1998, 2008, in the first years. But my guess would be between 19, 20% turnout when all said and done.
We were talking about this, Vince and I and Matt, during the break. I mean, you look at the numbers, if you combine absentees with early votes, and by the way, it seems like when you look at the number of days, more people voted in the amount of days of early vote than voted in a quick return of absentees. I know a lot of people return to absentees till 2-3 weeks later. We are spending boatloads of money. And let me paint this picture, and I'll talk about this at the election coverage starting at 7. For years, the news media on both sides had complained about that the election results were not quick enough, that we need to find something that needs to turn things back around much quicker. And so, lo and behold, the supervisor of elections of all these counties sat back and said, we need to push more for absentee ballots. Now, they claim it's a service to those out there that don't want to be bothered, but yet we're still finding that less than half are not voting in the absentees. We are spending thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars for this. And why don't we just promote early voting for a good 2 to 3 weeks, where I think it would save us money out there, instead of trying to please the media? What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's more than just the media. I think you have groups like League of Women Voters, other activist groups trying to push absentee ballot. And at the same time, let's be very candid here. I don't think any politician is going to say, I think we need to get rid of absentee ballots. They'll instantly be hammered up by whoever their opponents are as trying to close the window for voting. I don't think any Republican or Democrat at the state level is going to roll the dice on that one. There's very little payoff, it's reward, and a lot of damage that can be done. I just don't see any politician sticking his neck
Go
out
ahead.
for that one, state
Yeah.
level.
Yeah, I agree with Kevin there. And when you look back at when just the heat that Governor Scott took for suggesting there should be the voter ID law, which is now in effect, we saw the blowback he got from that. And the supervisor of elections really painted into a corner, because even if she tries to reduce the amount that go out and claim she's reducing cost, you're always going to have those critics that say, "Oh, voter accessibility, voter
Oh, I know. You're not going to
repression."
win.
So it's really tough, because you have to ask yourself,
But-
how much time do you give
Yeah,
people
but
to vote?
who's going to complain? I mean, what, the Democrats? The Democrats have been successful at early voting.
Well, they portray it as voter suppression, and they do it successfully because the media piggybacks off of it.
Okay, then fine. Then this is how I answer. How in the world do we get off by saying we're going to mail somebody who has not voted absentee, or somebody who's only voted 1 out of 8 elections, and treat them like a super voter? I mean, I like the old days, Kevin. It's kind of like going to a restaurant. If you don't make the reservation, it's first come, first serve. If you don't call, email, or submit an absentee ballot, then you vote like everybody else, early voting or the day of election.
I don't disagree with you on this one, Ed. But again, I think you're going to see no politician at the state level pick it up. Look, it's not just the Democrats who would be hurt by early voting. What would happen is you'd have Republicans who rely heavily on a senior vote, certainly at the statewide level in the general elections, would start talking, well, we need to make sure our seniors get out to polls. And what about military voters and their families? It's not just a Democratic issue here. I think both sides would play it up. There's, again, no reward, lots of risk for any Republican or Democrat who touches it. This is the third rail. You touch it, you get zapped.
Yeah, but I'm promoting more early voting than I am absentee. I mean, if we're worried about getting senior citizens to the polls, then why don't we start early voting the first week in August or the second week in August instead of a month and a half? I mean, absentee for military, totally understand that, and that should not be changed. But absentees, I mean, the bottom line here is that why not have early voting if the argument's going to be used for senior citizens? Then fine, they got 3 weeks to get out and vote, 4 weeks to get out and vote.
Yeah, but then the question becomes, especially in this quick-paced news cycle, of is that too much time? Do we find things out a week or two before elections? Are there shoes that drop on them? I think, look, I understand where you're coming from. I do think it is probably the most ideal solution. I just don't think any politician is going to be rolling the dice on that one. There's no reward for them, period.
I mean, do we really? I mean, we've been under pressure, or the supervisor of elections in the state have been under pressure for 20 years about, hey, and predominantly for the most part, by the way, guys, it's usually South Florida we have the problems at, where, for example, Matt O'Hearn, I mean, they're pressured about having the election results out by 9 o'clock at night, and that's great, but that's to the political elite. I mean, I know a lot of people that go to bed, they'll wake up the next day, find out who won. I mean, I understand the reason why they want to get it done by 9:30s, and the absentees ballots is a great way of doing that. But I mean, am I willing to spend? I mean, you look at 80,000 ballots going out here, Matt, at first class. I mean, that's thousands upon thousands of dollars. I mean, if we could save $40, $50, $80, $70,000 or whatever. And so we don't want to impress the media or some of the political elites because they want to get their election results by 9 o'clock, then tough.
I mean, in a perfect world, I would love to see that, but I think they're just too fearful of the backlash. I hate to sound like a broken record, but if they show any sign that they're taking that away, they're just going to be browbeaten by the media and everybody else, and it's going to look like Republicans, and it would backfire on Republicans if there's a Republican SOE especially. People would say, oh, you're taking people's voting privileges away. That's just the way it's going to be spun.
All right, so one of my good buddies who has worked for female friends, I want to keep it that way. I don't want you to know if it's male or female. I'm looking at it's female here, is basically saying that what we need to do is have super precincts. This way they can house 100 per building with the ballot demand machines on election day. This way you can direct voters to other slow places.
That's a pretty good idea. And that's what we should be talking about. New solutions. We shouldn't just be using the old absentee method. If we think there's better ways to ensure that the truly engaged voters are participating, and we can also assure that no one who wants to can participate is left out. It's just like you said, though. They're kind of painted. The SOEs are kind of painted into a corner with accommodating, going above and beyond what they really need to be, just to come across as really politically correct.
All right, I'm getting text messages from some of the listeners and those involved in the political arena going on in Brevard they said that activity is picking up.
Interesting.
So, so activity's picking up here.
Well,
Kevin,
it always happens at rush hour.
Yeah.
I think that the activity always picks up, between 4 to 6, 4 to 7. I think that's not a too much surprise at all.
would you agree with me what we need to do? I mean, for those of many individuals. By the way, let me introduce a guest, political editor for Space Coast Daily. By the way, you can watch us live on the air at spacecoastdaily.com, spacecoastdaily.com, spacecoastdaily.com/election. You can see Matt and myself on TV, Vince Young hanging out on the producer side, Kevin Derby, senior political writer, on the phone lines right now with Space Coast Daily. I mean, sorry, not Space Coast Daily, SunshineStateNews.com. If we're always out there trying to attract voters, you have barbecues to get people to come out and vote. I know the black community has a get out the vote process. Those in the Hispanic community, those in other areas. Why don't we have food so people would come out and vote and get them more attracted to come out and vote, Kevin?
They tried that in 1992. Subway, of all places, it came in on Election Day in 1992, and 83% of the state of Florida voted, the highest number we've ever seen in recent years. The plan was Subway was going to give out free subs if you had a I voted sticker. And can you believe it? The FEC shot that down, saying, no, that's bribery for letting people vote. You can't give them a sandwich. It was one of the most horrifying decisions.
Did you see that thing? There was an elections complaint against John Tobias, which is in a closely elected race in this county, where there was, Matt, did you follow? There was an ethics complaint where he sent out an envelope and he put a stamp in the envelope.
Correct.
Said, people, if you haven't voted yet, put your first-class stamp on the envelope and send it back in.
Yes.
Now, that may not sound...
Well,
but I mean, it's a bad law to break, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah, it could be a felony. Now, I want to full disclosure and preface this by saying I'm not saying he committed it, but I am saying I did some research in the statutes in the Florida Division of Elections. Now, this, like a lot of other controversial issues,
you're supposed to report it, and you're not supposed to get the vote or something.
Well, hang on. It could come down to interpretation. The way it's stated, it says you cannot provide anything, quote, of value that would persuade or assist someone distributing their absentee ballot, and you could make the argument that the 70-cent stamp does that. I don't know that it's
70 cents.
Wow.
Now, are they really going to pursue felony charges over 70-cent stamps?
If you lost, you would.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is you got to figure also that's times however many went out plus, and again, I'm not sure how this will be interpreted, but that goes.
Well,
with the mail.
but Kevin, let me ask you another before we go to break here, because I can keep you on through the break. Let me ask this question.
Yeah, of course.
What's the difference of Thad Altman or Monique Miller or any of these guys sending out a issue ballot or promoting your candidacy, and underneath it they talk about send it back in for the absentee ballot that's already prepaid?
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with that?
Well, again, it comes down to a matter of interpretation. I mean, you hate saying this, but whenever there are these kind of charges that are brought up in the last days of a campaign, it's one of those things that you never ceases to amaze me. The second the election's done, it vanishes. They all seem to go away. It's just one of those things. And I think when it comes this late in the game, a lot of people are just kind of shrugging it off.
Well, let me tell you something real quick before I take a break. If you're Chris McDaniel and Thad Cochran, it doesn't go away.
That's true, but that was, I think, the one exception out of what?
You may see that. All right. Can you hold on with us during the break?
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
All right, Kevin Derby, SunshineStateNews.com, my good friend, political editor, also with the SpaceCoastDaily.com. Matt O'Herney's the political editor. Watch us live on the air here on WMEL at SpaceCoastDaily.com/election, SpaceCoastDaily.com/election. We are broadcasting live out of the studios of 1300 WMEL. Back in a few moments.
AM 1300 WMEL.
There is awesome private sector job growth happening here in Brevard at Port Canaveral. Thank you, Port Commissioner Frank Sullivan, for leading the way with decades of business experience. Frank Sullivan gave his word 4 years ago that he would oppose tax levies, and he kept that promise. Job growth and a promise kept to fight tax levies. Frank Sullivan has earned our vote of confidence. For more, go to electfranksullivan.com.
Political ad paid for and approved. Frank Sullivan, Republican, Port Authority, District 3.
Conservative Republican Thad Altman is an effective champion for the Space and Treasure Coasts. Thad Altman passed legislation making Florida the most veteran and military-friendly state in America. The NRA's Marion Hammer has called out those making false attacks and praised Thad's outstanding record of defending our right to keep and bear arms, endorsing Thad and giving him their highest rating, an A+. Thad Altman cut wasteful spending to balance the state's budget and secured $170 million towards restoring the Indian River Lagoon to its natural beauty. And Thad Altman has called for investigations that will hold All Aboard Florida accountable for refusing to stop in our region. Helping veterans, protecting our Second Amendment rights, committed to restoring our community. On August 26th, vote for Thad Altman.
Political advertisement paid for and approved by Thad Altman, Republican for State Senate, District 16.
Serving Brevard County for over 30 years, Howard Garage Doors continues to provide a wide variety of quality garage door products at the most reasonable prices, giving you the best value for your money. At Howard Garage Doors, your garage door needs are done no matter if you're on a tight budget or you've just won the lottery. Remember, quality costs less in the long run at Howard Garage Doors. Serving all of Brevard County, call 727-8374, 727-8374. Howard Garage Doors. WMEL.
More of the Ed Dean Radio Show. We got some people that have worked within the supervisor elections that are talking to us right now. I'm dying to find out about the percentage of absentee returns. Let me see. She said 25 this year, more than happy. No. I've been told by the political insiders that the supervisor of election in this, and I'm not trying to pick a fight here. I just want to know that it was going to be 50%, because that's what all the people running for office were telling me, that the supervisor of elections was predicting that 50% of the returns were coming from absentees. Just curious if that's the case. Okay, more of the Ed Dean Radio Show, 24 minutes after the top of the hour. Kevin Derby from the SunshineStateNews.com, Matt O'Hearn, political editor from Space Coast Daily. You can also watch us live on the air as we're broadcasting live at a 1300 WMEL. SpaceCoastDaily.com/election. SpaceCoastDaily.com/election. Kevin Derby, tell me about. Let's make this good. We got to make this sexy now. Tell me what the Democrats are looking at between the election of Charlie Crist and Nan Rich today.
Look, I think Charlie Crist beats her by about 30, at least 30 points, something along the lines of 65-35, along those lines. Democrats are starting to increasingly come out for Charlie. Alex Sink, of all people, came out for Charlie Crist today and really took off the gloves, dropping swear words, the S word, the BS word in particular, against Rick Scott. So, yeah, I think Democrats are
real classy.
Rallying. Real classy, exactly. And I think Democrats are increasingly rallying behind Charlie Crist. I think Nan Rich, for whatever reason, she was in this race 2.5 years, never raised money, never got her name out there. And after 20 years of losing every gubernatorial election, Democrats are hungry for a win. They think they can do that with Charlie.
But what if Charlie, the media's response, the media's articles after tomorrow and this week, if hypothetically, and again, this is pure hypothetically, if Charlie only won by 10 or 12 points, that would not look good for Charlie.
No, that wouldn't look good for Charlie, but that's not going to happen. The story's going to be Charlie's going to run off with this thing, and then you're going to hear, oh, wow, it's amazing. Charlie Crist, a Democrat who's only been there since December 2012, has rallied his party behind him. That's what you're going to hear tomorrow. There's a lot of reasons for it. Some of it is Charlie's targeted pinpointing campaigning, no arguing that. Part of it is the party leadership bent over backwards to help Charlie Crist. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. He even has a political boss as his running mate, Annette Taddeo. That's part of it. Part of it was just Nan Rich never caught fire. And in retrospect, one thing that I think helped Charlie was the constant parade of names of maybe Democratic contenders like Alex Sink, like Bill Nelson, like, to a lesser extent, Dan Gelber. The procession of names, people like, oh, he might run, she might run. I think that helped Charlie. It really did, because it made sure that people who might oppose Charlie and support Nan Rich kind of were frozen for a while, thinking, well, gee, maybe Bill Nelson gets in.
What do you? We have such a low voter turnout. Is that to blame? Now, I'm going to talk more about this at our election coverage at 7 o'clock at the top of the hour. Again, we'll be on from 7 to 9, even further if we have to, here on WMEL. Also, our partners at spacecoastdaily.com/elections. We'll have all the first coverage before it hits the TV. You'll get it here from WMEL and spacecoastdaily.com/election. You can watch us live on the air. We have all the cameras out ready to go right now. Do you blame the low voter turnout on apathy or the candidates not properly getting their message out? And wait a second, let me throw in another one here. These half a dozen plus candidates that are running in the race.
Well, I think in this time out, it is a lot of apathy. This is not one of those elections like 1992 where you see massive turnout, where people are actually inspired by their candidates, whether it's Bush, Perot, or Clinton. This is one of those elections where you're going to be voting for the lesser of two evils. When that's the case, people stay home. When their choice comes down to a lesser of two evils, they stay home. They get much less involved. They get much less engaged. I think that's what's happening here. You look at the numbers, nobody, Charlie Crist, not Rick Scott, none of their numbers are favorable. All these candidates are upside down, very little enthusiasm at the top of the ticket this year.
I'm telling you, Adrian Wiley, the Libertarian, is not going to win, but he's going to be a spoiler.
Adrian can do well here. He really can. I mean, he's going to have problems. He's a very solid candidate, very sharp candidate, very good on the stump, very good debater. He is actually in one of the debates so far, and that could be interesting. I do expect Libertarians to have higher than normal here in Florida. You look at their most recent elections. 2010, the Senate candidate Alex Snicker got about 1/2 of 1%. Last time out, Gary Johnson got 1%. Libertarians are starting to grow. I wouldn't be surprised if Adrian manages between 2.5 to 3%.
All right. Are you going to be able to join us a little bit in between the 7 and 9 hour tonight or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I should be able to. I'll be covering elections here in the North Florida, but absolutely, I should be able to.
All right, Kevin Derby from the SunshineStateNews.com. Thank you so much for coming on. He is a senior political writer. Back from the break. Thanks so much for coming on, Kevin. Now, 7 to 9, unbiased election coverage analysis, the pros and cons. We'll get some more predictions if you missed it last night. We'll deal them again here in just a few moments of who looks like who's going to win. Back in a few moments, along with SpaceCoastDaily.com/elections. This is the Ed Dean Radio Show on WMEL.